The boy's voice cuts through the silent kitchen like a blade. "Dad, why did Mom never leave the hospital parking lot?" Ethan Price freezes mid-sip, coffee trembling in his hands. The mug clinks softly against the counter, but the room already feels like it's shattered. His son, Noah, now 7 and sharp-eyed, looks up from the worn photo he found in the drawer, one of his mother, smiling and 8 months pregnant, a hospital badge clipped to her coat. A photo Ethan never meant for him to see. "Where did you get that?" Ethan asks, tone colder than intended. Noah shrinks a little. "I found it in the drawer. I wanted to see what she looked like. For real. Not just the baby pictures. And then I searched online." Ethan's world narrows. "You what?" "I searched her name, and it said she disappeared. From the hospital, and you never told me that, Dad." His son's voice trembles now, hurt mixing with curiosity. "Why would she just vanish?" Ethan doesn't answer, because how do you explain that the truth has claws, and that asking the wrong question could rip open everything? The weather that afternoon had been a strange mix of warm light and chilling wind, the kind of unsettled air that made people uneasy without quite knowing why. Jenna Price exited the double doors of Ridgefield General Hospital, a cotton hospital folder tucked under one arm, the other resting gently atop her pregnant belly. She was 36 weeks along, the final stretch, and glowing in a way that masked the storm churning beneath her surface. She had smiled politely at the receptionist, told her favorite nurse goodbye, and stepped into the crisp March sunlight for what everyone assumed would be a routine drive home. Security footage showed her walking confidently across the parking lot, pausing near the third row to answer a call. She had been talking to someone, her husband Ethan most assumed, gesturing with one hand while balancing her folder and gift bag in the other. A moment later, she walked to her sedan, opened the driver's side door, and that was it. The camera lost her in a blind spot just before she got in. She was never seen again. Her car was found an hour later, still parked in the same spot. The driver's door was open an inch. The engine was off, but the keys were dangling from the ignition like someone had intended to return in seconds. Her purse sat untouched in the passenger seat. Her cell phone was there too, battery drained. Even the vanilla-scented candle gifted by a nurse sat upright in the footwell, ribbon still intact. It was Ethan who first noticed something was wrong. Jenna always texted when she left the hospital. She was meticulous like that. 10 minutes past her appointment, he assumed she got distracted. 20 minutes later, he called. No answer. After an hour, the unease had solidified into panic. He called her parents, the hospital, even the police. They all offered the same meaningless comfort. She'll turn up. But Ethan knew she wouldn't. By midnight, search teams combed the hospital grounds. Dogs sniffed the lot. Officers canvassed the area. There were no screams heard, no broken glass, no signs of a struggle. A woman, nearly 9 months pregnant, had simply evaporated. Ridgefield General had over 30 surveillance cameras on site. None captured her beyond that walk through the lot. It was as if the earth had opened up and swallowed her whole. The media swarmed the next morning. Jenna was young, beautiful, and very pregnant, a combination the press devoured. "Missing mom-to-be," the headlines screamed. Reporters camped outside Ethan's home. The police held daily press briefings, often repeating the same refrain: "We're following all leads." Ethan stood in front of the cameras, exhausted and trembling, holding a framed ultrasound photo. "If you've seen my wife," he pleaded, voice cracking, "if you know anything, please come forward. She's due in 4 weeks. We just want her home." But the leads were few and fleeting. An elderly couple claimed they saw a black van circling the parking lot that day, but had no license plate or driver description. A hospital janitor reported a strange man loitering near the parking garage, but no one else could confirm it. Jenna's phone records were clean. Her last call had been to Ethan, as expected, at 3:42 p.m. She had said, "I'm leaving now, love you," and nothing more. Theories sprouted like weeds. Some believed she had a mental breakdown, the stress of impending motherhood sending her into a fugue state. Others whispered about secret affairs, suggested she ran off with another man. A few questioned Ethan himself, as they always do in disappearances, but no evidence supported it. The polygraph he took came back clean. Surveillance footage showed him at home preparing dinner exactly when she vanished. Eventually, suspicion faded from him, replaced by something colder: silence. Days turned into weeks. Her face remained on missing persons boards, but the space between updates stretched longer. Interest waned. Other tragedies filled the news cycle. And then, just as the world seemed ready to forget her, Ethan walked into a local emergency room in the middle of the night, clutching something to his chest. It was storming hard that night, rain like nails pounding the asphalt. Ethan's clothes were soaked through, his hair matted against his forehead, blood on his shirt that wasn't his. He stepped through the ER doors and cried out, "Help! Please help!" Nurses rushed to him, and only then did they realize he was holding a newborn. A baby boy, pale and writhing, wrapped in a towel streaked with crimson. "She was left on my porch," Ethan stammered out. There was no note, she was just there. He repeated it over and over. She was just there. Doctors took the baby, cleaned him, warmed him, confirmed that aside from dehydration and mild hypothermia, he was healthy. Ethan wept as they pried the child from his arms. He answered questions like a man in a trance, every reply short and hoarse. He didn't know who had left the baby. He hadn't seen a car, he hadn't heard anything over the storm. He'd just opened the door and found a bundle left in a laundry basket. Authorities immediately suspected foul play. DNA testing confirmed what some feared and others hoped. The baby was Jenna's. The hospital confirmed his gestational age lined up with her due date almost exactly, but if she had given birth, where was she? The state launched a fresh investigation. Was Jenna still alive when she delivered? Had she been held somewhere? Was she killed during or after labor? Every answer only led to more questions. No other DNA was found on the child. No fibers, no clues. The press returned with a vengeance. The headlines grew darker. Baby found, mother still missing. Rumors spun like wildfire. Some believed Jenna had been kept alive long enough to give birth, then discarded like evidence. Others said she'd died in childbirth, buried by whoever had taken her. A darker theory suggested she had been trafficked. Her child handed over like a commodity. Through it all, Ethan clung to the baby, named him Noah, the name they had chosen together months earlier, back when the world made sense. He locked the doors tighter, declined all interviews, slowly retreated from the public eye. He raised Noah in solitude, wrapping his son in the armor of routine and silence. But inside, something festered, the unanswered questions, the weight of a porch light that still flicked on at night, just in case. And worst of all, the secret Ethan had never told anyone. Because when he had found the baby that night, there had been something else. A scrap of torn paper beneath the towel, stained and nearly illegible. 4 words. She paid the price. He had burned it before the police arrived, and for 7 years, Ethan told no one. Noah Price was a quiet child, but not the kind of quiet that meant shy or withdrawn. His silence came from something deeper, a kind of early wisdom, a knowingness that made adults pause. His teachers often said he was observant, and they meant it as a compliment. But what they didn't know was that Noah had learned early that listening told him more than speaking ever could. He had grown up in a house where questions were quietly discouraged, where certain names were spoken softly and only in past tense. He never heard his father say the word dead, but the silence that followed the mention of his mother's name felt just as final. From the time he was old enough to form memories, there had been pictures, photos on the mantel, tucked into albums, one framed next to his bed. All of them showed the same beautiful woman, dark hair, warm smile, eyes that looked like his. That was how he came to know his mother. Through fragments. Through moments frozen in time. His father rarely spoke of her directly, but he told stories. At night, when Noah couldn't sleep, Ethan would sit at the edge of the bed and recall how Jenna used to hum when she cooked, how she loved late-night drives, how she was convinced Noah would be born during a thunderstorm. Noah clung to those stories like lifelines. But as he grew older, so did the questions. Why weren't there more photos of her? Why didn't they visit her grave like his friends visited their grandparents' graves? Why was her name never mentioned at school events or on Mother's Day? The answers Ethan gave were vague, evasive, always circled back to the same phrase. She loved you more than anything. That's what matters. For a time, that was enough. But children grow, curiosity sharpens. And Noah, by the time he was 7, had begun to understand that something was wrong. It started with a substitute teacher who, while reading a story about families, asked the class if anyone had ever visited a hospital. When Noah raised his hand and said he was born in a hospital but his mum never came home, the teacher paused strangely. Later that day, she pulled him aside, asked gentle questions. Too gentle. It made Noah feel strange. Then came the incident that changed everything, the drawer. It had been a rainy Saturday, the kind of dull, quiet afternoon where kids wander out of boredom. Ethan was in the garage organizing tools, and Noah had been flipping through an old photo album when he found a drawer in the living room cabinet. One usually kept locked, but today it clicked open with ease. Inside were stacks of papers, newspaper clippings, an old flash drive, and one photo that made his chest tighten. It was his mother, visibly pregnant, standing in what looked like a hospital corridor. She was smiling, holding a bouquet, and wearing a badge that said Jenna Price, Visitor. The photo looked like it had been printed from a security camera frame, low quality, tinted blue-gray, but it was real. And on the back, someone had written a date, March 23, 2018. Noah turned to the computer that sat in the corner of the living room, rarely used except for paying bills. He searched her name. Jenna Price missing. And there it was. A flood of articles, most dated 7 years ago. His hands trembled as he clicked the first one. Pregnant woman vanishes from hospital parking lot. Car left behind. No leads. He read through everything. His eyes caught sentences like, no struggle, baby due in 4 weeks. Husband pleads for help. There was a video link, an old news segment. Noah watched his father's younger self speak into a microphone, voice breaking. She wouldn't just leave. Please, if you know anything. The words didn't make sense. Why hadn't Ethan told him this? Why had his whole life been built around bedtime stories and half-truths when the reality was that his mother hadn't died from illness or accident? She had disappeared. Someone had taken her, or worse. That night, Noah didn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the old house, the ticking of the wall clock. The wind pressed against the window panes, but inside it was a different kind of storm that raged. At breakfast the next morning, he asked the question he couldn't keep inside anymore. Dad, why did Mum never leave the hospital parking lot? The fork slipped from Ethan's hand and clattered against the plate. For a long moment, he just stared at Noah, pale and unblinking. Something deep in his face shifted, like a door slamming shut behind his eyes. Noah watched the way his father's jaw tensed, how his fingers gripped the edge of the table. Where did you hear that? Ethan asked, his voice quieter than usual. I found a photo in the drawer, Noah said, and then I looked up her name. Ethan stood abruptly, pushing his chair back. He turned away, walking to the sink. For a while, he just stood there, hands gripping the counter. Finally, he said, You shouldn't be reading things like that. Why not? Noah's voice wavered. Why didn't you ever tell me the truth? Ethan exhaled slowly, as if trying to hold something back. Because some truths don't bring peace, Noah. They only bring more questions. And danger. But you said she loved me. She did, Ethan whispered. That's why she's gone. Noah didn't understand what that meant, not fully. But he knew something now, something big, something dark. And once a child knows a lie has been told, they begin to pull at every thread. Later that day, Ethan took the photo, the articles, and the flash drive and locked them away again. But it was too late. The silence he had spent years building had finally cracked. And in its place, a fire was beginning to burn in his son, quiet but unrelenting. Because for 7 years, Noah Price had lived without knowing what had happened to his mother. Now, he couldn't imagine living another day without finding out. The house felt different after that morning. It wasn't just the silence, which had always lived in the walls like a ghost. They were used to that. It was the tension underneath, the sense that something had shifted in the foundation. A fragile illusion had cracked, and no one knew how to put it back together. Noah still ate breakfast at the same wooden table, still packed his school bag every morning, but something behind his eyes had changed. He watched his father now, not like a boy seeking comfort, but like a detective studying a suspect. Ethan noticed the difference. He noticed the way Noah's questions became more subtle, the way he lingered by the hallway drawer when he thought Ethan wasn't looking. There were moments when Noah would simply stare at him, not angrily, not even accusingly, just studying, as though trying to determine which version of his father was real, the one who tucked him in each night, or the one who burned a note and buried a truth 7 years ago. The question, why didn't Mum leave the parking lot, hung between them now like a low-hanging storm cloud. Ethan pretended it had passed, pretended the conversation was over, but he could feel it there in the room with them, waiting. What he didn't know was that Noah hadn't stopped with one Google search. That same night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Noah crept into the living room with a flashlight and turned on the old computer. His heart pounded in his chest as he typed search terms. Jenna Price case update. Ridgefield General missing woman, pregnant woman abduction hospital. Most of the articles were old, archived in forgotten corners of the internet. But some still held images, grainy security footage, a photo of his mother at a baby shower, even one of the missing posters with her face on it, in bold letters beneath the word, vanished. Then he stumbled across a forum, a true crime message board, buried deep in the search results. One thread titled, Unsolved. Jenna Price, what really happened? The users there weren't professionals. They weren't police or journalists. They were strangers with usernames like Dark Frost 99 and Shadow Scribe. But they knew things. One post mentioned a black van that had been seen near the hospital. Another mentioned a pharmaceutical scandal. One user wrote cryptically, "You don't just disappear for testifying unless someone wants you silenced permanently." Noah didn't understand it all, but one thing became clear. This wasn't just a case of someone going missing. His mother had enemies, powerful ones, and someone, maybe multiple people, had a reason to make her vanish. He printed out one image that caught his attention, a blurry still from a security camera showing a tall man standing across from the hospital's south exit. The caption read, "Unidentified, possibly linked to van sighting." The man's face was indistinct, but something about his posture unnerved Noah. He folded the printout and slipped it into his backpack. In the days that followed, the tension between Noah and Ethan began to calcify into something heavier. It wasn't open hostility. Ethan still drove Noah to school, still packed his lunch. But there was distance now, an invisible wall neither wanted to name. Sometimes Noah would hear his father pacing in the kitchen late at night, as if the walls were closing in. Then, on a Thursday evening, something else changed. Noah returned home from school to find his father in the living room, holding the printout, the one of the unidentified man. It had fallen out of Noah's backpack. Ethan stood frozen, his face unreadable. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice low. Noah stood by the doorway, not answering. "I asked you a question, Noah." "I found it online," he said finally, "on a forum about Mom's case." Ethan stared at the image again, his grip tightening until the paper began to crease. "You need to stop looking," he said, "right now. Don't search anything else. Don't ask anyone else about this. Do you hear me?" "Why?" Noah asked, a flicker of defiance rising. "Because I might find something you've been hiding?" Ethan's eyes flashed. Because people who ask too many questions get hurt. There it was, the thing Ethan had never said aloud, the fear that had shaped their lives for 7 years. Not grief, not loss, fear. Noah didn't back down. "Is that what happened to Mom?" Ethan didn't answer. He just folded the photo in half, once, then again, and tossed it into the fireplace. The flame caught quickly, curling the edges until it turned black and disappeared into ash. But the image had already burned into Noah's mind. The next morning, a note appeared in their mailbox. It was a single sheet of paper, folded once. No envelope, no signature. "Stop asking questions. She's gone for a reason." Ethan found it first. He stood on the porch in his slippers, reading it silently before crumpling it in his fist and shoving it into his pocket. He didn't tell Noah, not yet. But the way he double-checked the locks that night, the way he looked out the window before going to bed, it told Noah everything he needed to know. Something was still watching them. Noah felt it too, that invisible pressure, like they were being followed by a shadow neither of them could see. But instead of fear, something else took hold inside him, something colder, determination, because if someone wanted him to stop digging, it meant there was still something to find. And that was all the confirmation he needed. Ethan hadn't meant to lie, not at first. When Jenna disappeared, everything had happened so quickly. Then all at once, nothing happened at all. The police gave him empty sympathy and procedural dead ends. Reporters wanted emotions, not truth. And when the baby showed up, when Noah showed up, it was like life dropped him into a new identity overnight. He was no longer a man searching for his wife. He was a single father raising a miracle child. Everyone thought that chapter had closed. Except Ethan had never believed it had. And now, after 7 years of silence, the ghosts were stirring again. The note in the mailbox haunted him. The handwriting was slanted and almost careless, as though whoever had written it didn't fear being traced. That chilled Ethan more than the words themselves. Whoever had sent it wasn't warning him, they were reminding him that Jenna hadn't disappeared by chance. She had been taken. Because she knew something. And someone had made sure she would never speak again. Ethan tried to keep Noah from sensing his anxiety, but it was no use. The boy was too perceptive. He noticed the shift in routines. The way the blinds were always drawn now, the way Ethan kept his phone close even at night, and how the front porch light stayed off, even when darkness fell. It wasn't long before Noah confronted him. There was a note, wasn't there? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Someone doesn't want us asking questions, Noah said quietly. Ethan sat down, rubbing his face. It's more than that. It's not just that they want us quiet. They're watching. Who? Ethan looked at his son, and for the first time the wall he'd built around the truth cracked just enough to let something through. Your mom, he began, wasn't just a nurse. Before that, she worked for a pharmaceutical company called AstraCore. Noah furrowed his brow. What kind of company? They developed experimental drugs, some for cancer, others for rare neurological conditions, but the company cut corners. They were running trials on people without full disclosure. Some of those patients died. Noah's mouth fell slightly open. Your mum found out, Ethan continued. She gathered evidence, documents, recordings. She couldn't live with it, so she became a whistleblower. She testified? Ethan nodded. Yes, her testimony helped shut down part of the company. One executive, Leon Wexler, was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for negligence and data fraud. He was released 6 weeks before your mom disappeared. Noah's heart thudded in his chest. You think he came after her? I don't know, Ethan said, but I do know that 2 days before she vanished, she got a call. She wouldn't say from who, but after she hung up, she said, I think someone's watching me, someone who knows about the trial. Did you tell the police? Ethan looked down. No. Why not? Because I didn't want to believe it was real. I thought she was being paranoid. She'd been under so much stress. And then, he stopped himself, his voice choking. Then she was gone. Noah stared at the floor, trying to connect all the puzzle pieces. So, what if someone took her to punish her, or to keep her from talking more? I've thought about that every day for 7 years. But she had the baby. Someone gave me back to you. Ethan's face darkened. And left a note. She paid the price. I burned it before the police came. I told them you were left anonymously, but I didn't mention the note. I didn't want them treating your birth like a crime scene. Noah's voice shook. So we were both supposed to disappear. Maybe. Maybe they thought you were leverage. Or maybe she begged them to save you. The room fell into a heavy silence. Outside, wind rustled through the trees, but inside everything stood still. After a long pause, Noah asked, Who else knows about this? No one, Ethan said. I buried it. Because the people who did this, they're powerful, and they're not afraid to do it again. But they're not invisible, Noah said. If we find the people who were there that day, someone must have seen something. I've looked, Ethan said. For years, I filed FOIA requests, dug through old records, hired a private investigator who eventually gave up. Everything hit a wall. The hospital claimed the cameras malfunctioned. Witnesses recanted. One even moved out of state. Noah's mind was already racing. But what if there's something everyone missed? Something you didn't think to look for? Ethan didn't argue. Deep down, a part of him had never stopped looking either. Noah stood. "Show me everything." "What?" "Everything you've kept. The files, the photos, the flash drive. I want to see it all." Ethan hesitated for only a moment before standing and walking to the hallway closet. From the top shelf, behind an old winter blanket, he pulled down a heavy lockbox. He set it on the dining table and unlocked it with a key he wore on a chain around his neck. Inside were the physical remnants of the investigation, a handful of printed emails, newspaper clippings, a thumb drive, and a single worn envelope marked Ridgefield PD Evidence Return, 2019. Noah opened the envelope and pulled out a partially smudged still frame from a security video. The same man from the forum post, standing near the hospital's exit. Unidentified. Ethan spoke quietly. "That photo was never officially released. A tech at the department made a copy for me on the side. He said it was flagged but never followed up." Noah turned the photo over. Nothing on the back, no timestamp. He looked up. This guy, if he was watching Mom, he could still be alive. He might even still be close. "I thought about that," Ethan said. "But without a name, we're chasing shadows." Noah picked up the flash drive. "Then maybe we shine a light." The flash drive was small, one of those old silver swivel models, scratched and dulled by time. It didn't look like much, but when Noah plugged it into the family's desktop computer that night, it felt like he was opening a vault. A quiet hum filled the room as the device blinked to life. On screen, a single folder popped up. Its name was simply J Evidence. Ethan stood behind him, arms crossed, watching with a mixture of tension and reluctance. "Your mum made that drive the week before she disappeared," he said softly. "She told me, if anything ever happens, someone needs to know." Noah clicked the folder. Inside were PDFs, scans of lab reports, spreadsheets, and audio files labeled by date. It was overwhelming, especially for a boy who'd just turned 7. But his focus was razor-sharp. The files painted a disturbing picture, a pattern of suppressed patient deaths, data tampering, and forged consent forms, all tied to AstraCore, the company Jenna had exposed. Her notes were meticulous. One document had an entire email thread between her and a journalist who had been working on a feature story. The last message from Jenna read, "They threatened me. If I go public, they'll ruin my life. I'm scared, but I can't stay quiet." Noah's fingers hovered over a file labeled redacted_audio_0218.mp3. He clicked it. Static buzzed through the speakers, followed by Jenna's voice, clear, firm, but tinged with unease. "This is Jenna Price. It's February 18th. I just left a meeting where I was warned again not to speak to the press. They said if I keep pushing, I won't make it to delivery. I don't know if they're bluffing, but if anything happens to me, if I disappear, start with the hospital. Someone there is helping them cover this up. I know it." The room fell dead silent after the recording ended. Ethan swallowed hard. "She made that late one night, after I'd already gone to bed. I didn't even know about it until the police returned her belongings. They never did anything with it." "They didn't want to," Noah said flatly. "It's easier to lose a woman than take down a corporation." Ethan didn't argue. For the next several hours, father and son sat together, combing through the rest of the flash drive. Most of it was dense and technical, but in the final folder, labeled March_23_hospital, Noah found something different. A photo, just one. It was an image of the Ridgefield General parking lot, viewed from a higher angle, not from a hospital camera, but from a completely different perspective. Ethan leaned in. "Where the hell did she get that?" The angle was from the upper level of a nearby parking garage, public, not owned by the hospital. The timestamp, 3:45 p.m., matched the exact minute Jenna had vanished. In the center of the frame was Jenna herself, walking toward her car, but behind her, in the shadows near the stairwell, stood a man. Tall, broad shoulders, dark coat. Noah enlarged the image. "It's him," he whispered. "The man in the other photo. It's the same guy." Ethan stared at the screen, frozen. "That garage. I remember. She mentioned it once, said it was across from the hospital but rarely used by patients, mostly for overflow or staff who didn't want to pay for permit parking. Noah didn't wait. He opened a browser and searched Ridgefield Southside Garage. To his surprise, the place was still listed, still operational. A few reviews online called it abandoned feeling, but it technically remained city property. Then a bold idea struck him. What happens to old cameras in garages like that? Ethan shrugged. Depends. Some are wiped monthly, others are just shut off and forgotten. Noah typed in Ridgefield City Auction, surplus electronics. It took a few clicks, but soon he found a government site listing old equipment for sale. Storage servers, signs, even used parking meters. And then he saw it. Obsolete security equipment, lot hash 348, includes cameras, memory hardware, Ridgefield Southside Garage, recovered 2020. The item had been sold 2 years ago to a reseller in Pennsylvania. Noah copied the company name and searched again. He found their website. They specialized in digital salvage and data recovery. Old security footage, damaged drives, recovered media from scrapped systems. Noah turned to Ethan, excitement flaring behind his eyes. They bought the security equipment from the garage. What if there's still footage, something no one ever looked at? Ethan hesitated. Even if it existed. It's been 7 years. The odds. Mum left us a clue, Noah cut in. This photo, that flash drive, she was trying to point us here. It's not about odds anymore. It's about finishing what she started. Ethan stared at his son for a long moment, at the spark in his eyes, the conviction. He saw Jenna in that look, and something in him, long buried, began to stir again. Okay, he said at last, let's contact them. That night, Ethan sent an email to the salvage company with the subject line, Inquiry about lot, hash 348 urgent. He didn't say much, just that they were looking for any footage from a very specific date and location, and that it might be tied to a missing person case. He didn't expect a response right away, but it came the very next morning. Hello, Mr. Price. We still have the drive from that lot. It was too degraded for resale, but some footage was partially recovered and archived. We'll send you a download link to whatever we were able to salvage. No guarantees it's usable, but you're welcome to look. Ethan stared at the message, then at Noah. Do you want to do this? Noah nodded. We're not stopping now. They downloaded the file. It was several gigabytes, old analog footage compressed into jagged digital form. Grainy, warped, sometimes skipping frames. They watched for nearly 20 minutes, cars pulling in and out of the garage, people coming and going, nothing unusual, until a black van rolled into frame. 3:43 p.m. Noah leaned forward. The van slowed near the stairwell, stopped. 2 men exited. One leaned casually against the pillar, the other walked toward the sidewalk. Then Jenna appeared on screen, crossing the lot, walking toward her sedan. She paused, looked over her shoulder, just a brief second, then picked up her pace. The man from the pillar stepped into the open, and then the camera glitched. Static lines, a skip. When the feed stabilized, the van's back doors were closing. And Jenna was gone. The silence after the video ended was suffocating. The screen had frozen on the final frame, the black van disappearing down the ramp of the Ridgefield Southside Garage, taillights glowing like eyes retreating into the dark. Ethan sat motionless, his mouth slightly open, hands clenched into fists in his lap. Noah, meanwhile, stared at the screen like he was trying to pull his mother out of the pixels. That was her, in motion, alive. 7 years after her disappearance, they had just watched the final seconds before she vanished from the world. But now they knew. She hadn't walked away. She had been taken. Ethan broke the silence first. Download that. Save it on every drive we have. Noah nodded, his hands already moving. This proves it, he said, voice hushed but fierce. They lied. Everyone lied. He was right. The hospital had claimed no vehicles of interest were seen. The police said no evidence suggested abduction. But here was footage that had been either discarded, ignored, or covered up. And it showed the truth. Someone had abducted Jenna Price in broad daylight, in a hospital parking lot. And someone had made sure no one ever found out. Ethan ran a hand through his hair and stood, pacing the room like a caged animal. We need to go to someone with this. The state police, the press. Noah looked up. No, not yet. Ethan turned, startled. What? Why not? Because the moment this goes public, they'll know we have it. If these people could cover this up once, they can do it again. But now we still have the advantage. We know something they don't. Ethan paused, weighing it. You want to stay ahead of them? I want to finish this, Noah said. If we go public now, they'll come out swinging. We won't get another chance. Ethan hesitated, then slowly nodded. So what's the next move? We find out who they are, the men in that van. If we can ID even one of them, we break this thing wide open. It was a bold plan, but it made sense. The video was old, low res, and the men's faces were turned away from the camera. Still, there were details. Height, build, clothing, even the van itself. A black Dodge Ram, older model, with a dent in the rear bumper and no visible license plate. Not much, but enough to start digging. They posted a cropped frame of the van to an online image enhancement forum under a fake name. A user responded, offering to run it through a software tool that pulled plate number fragments from reflections and shadows. The process would take days. While they waited, Ethan did something he hadn't done in years. He returned to the case. He reconnected with the old private investigator, Martin Graves, a retired cop who once believed in Ethan's story before everything went cold. When Ethan showed him the footage, Martin went pale. "Where the hell did you get this?" he whispered. "Recovered garage data. Long story. We need names." Graves leaned in, studying the men. "I can't guarantee much. This footage is garbage. But I can try." "You still have your contacts?" "I'll make calls," Graves said. "Quiet ones." But it didn't stay quiet. 2 days later, their mailbox was ripped open, the contents stolen. At first, Ethan thought it was random vandalism until he noticed the front door lock had fresh scratch marks around it, like someone had tried to force it before giving up. Then, late that night, the phone rang. Not Ethan's phone, Noah's. It was an unknown number. He answered before Ethan could stop him. There was no voice, just breathing. Heavy, slow. Then a low, distorted message. "You should have let her go." Click. The line went dead. Ethan snatched the phone, his face drained of color. "What number was that?" he demanded. Noah stared at the screen. No caller ID. Someone was watching again. But fear wasn't the only thing building now. Beneath it was something deeper, a rage, a resolve. Whoever had done this thought they could scare them back into silence. They were wrong. The next morning, Graves called back. "I think I found one of them," he said. "I can't be sure, but there's a guy who matches the profile, height, weight, build, who worked as private security for AstraCorp back in 2017. Name's Cameron Dorsey." "Where is he now?" Ethan asked. "Runs a small trucking business out of Mapleton. Changed his name in 2020 after a bankruptcy case. But get this, he was arrested in 2019 for aggravated assault. Charges dropped mysteriously." Noah looked at his father. "That's our guy." Ethan nodded. "Let's pay him a visit." They drove out to Mapleton the following afternoon. A quiet, grey town with empty storefronts and old pickup trucks. The kind of place where no one asked questions and everyone kept their blinds half drawn. Dorsey's business was located in a rusted metal building at the edge of town. Dorsey Freight Company was painted in flaking letters above the bay door. A single security camera hung limp on its bracket. Ethan parked a block away. "You sure about this?" he asked Noah. "I'm not scared of him," Noah said. "He took my mum." They waited until dusk, when the lights inside the warehouse dimmed. Then Ethan approached the side door while Noah stayed hidden, watching through a pair of borrowed binoculars. A minute passed, then another. Then Ethan came out, faster than expected, and climbed back into the car. "What happened?" Noah asked. "He's gone, packed up. Place was cleared out." Noah stared at the building. "You think he ran?" "Maybe," Ethan said. "Or maybe someone made him run." Because someone out there was still watching, still pulling strings, and now that the past had been dug up, they were working fast to bury it again. The silence in the car on the way back from Mapleton was heavier than any conversation. The empty warehouse had confirmed what Ethan feared. Someone was cleaning up. Someone was watching their every move and staying just one step ahead. But Noah didn't speak. His eyes remained fixed on the window, watching the blurred shapes of trees and fences slide past like ghosts. In his hands, he held the printout Graves had given them, a DMV file on Cameron Dorsey, complete with a mugshot, a list of aliases, and a last known address that was already outdated. Noah stared at the man's face, the unshaven jaw, the faint smirk that curled at the edge of his mouth. This man had been there that day. He might have been the last person to see his mother alive, and now he'd vanished again. They got home well past dark. Ethan checked the locks first, then the windows, then the backyard, his paranoia now a constant routine. Noah headed straight to his room, locked the door behind him, and turned on his desk lamp. He didn't want to talk, not yet. Something inside him was shifting, a coldness, a clarity. He couldn't explain it, but it felt like the closer they got to the truth, the further away his mother seemed. Later that night, as Ethan finally drifted into restless sleep on the living room couch, Noah opened his laptop. He returned to the same forum where he had first found the still frame of the man in the garage. He created a new post, this time under a different alias, and attached a cropped image of the recovered security footage, asking if anyone could help enhance it further or identify the black van. Then he closed the tab and checked his email, half expecting nothing. But something was there. One new message. From unknown sender 212@protonmail.com. Subject: You're not asking the right questions. Body: She knew what she was walking into. She chose it. Ask your father what she kept from you. Noah read the email 3 times. The words seared into him. Ask your father what she kept from you. For the first time, the truth didn't feel like a straight road. It bent, curved, twisted. Noah's first instinct was to show it to Ethan, but he stopped himself. The email had shaken something loose inside him. What if his father had only given him half the story? Not out of cruelty, but out of protection, or fear, or guilt. Noah pulled out the flash drive again. He had copied all of its contents to his laptop earlier, but this time he looked through the folder labeled simply Personal. It had only 2 files. The first was a scan of a handwritten letter addressed to my son, when you're old enough to ask. Noah's hands trembled as he opened it. Noah, if you're reading this, it means I never got to see you grow up. I hope you have your father's heart. I hope you're safe. I hope you know you were wanted, desperately wanted. But I owe you a truth no one else can give. I made choices, dangerous ones. Years ago, I got involved with people at AstraCore who promised to fast-track trials and improve treatments for pregnant women with high-risk conditions. It was experimental, unethical maybe, but I was young and I believed in the science. I even participated in an early trial before you were conceived. Later, I found out they had lied. Patients were getting sick. 2 women died during childbirth, but when I tried to leave, they threatened me. Then I got pregnant. With you. And I realized I might have carried something into my own body I couldn't take back. That's when I started recording everything. They told me I couldn't walk away, that I had to be silent or I'd lose everything. But I chose to speak, even if it cost me. Ethan didn't want me to go to the press. He was scared. And maybe he was right. But I had to. If I disappear, it wasn't just because they came for me. I walked toward them, because I had to make sure you got out. Never forget that, Mum. Noah sat back in his chair, the words pulsing through his mind. His mother hadn't just been a victim. She had made the ultimate choice. She knew the risk. She had faced it. He wasn't the result of a tragedy. He was the reason she had fought. He closed the letter and opened the second file. It was a video. Jenna sat on a couch in what looked like their old home. The timestamp in the corner read March 20th, 2018, 3 days before she vanished. She was wearing a grey cardigan, hair tied back, eyes a little tired but focused, determined. "Hi, Noah," she said, her voice soft. "I don't know how old you'll be when you see this. Maybe you'll be grown, maybe still young. But if you're watching this, it means I didn't come back. I want you to know I didn't run, I didn't abandon you. I made a choice to protect you. The people I stood up to, they hide behind money and lawyers. But I have the truth. and I hope one day you'll find it. And if you do, Noah, don't stop until you finish what I started." The video ended. Noah stared at the screen long after it went black. He felt hollow and full at the same time. Her voice had broken something inside him, but it had also rebuilt something stronger. His grief had always been for what he lost. Now it became a fire for what he would find. At 3:11 a.m., Noah crept into the living room, where Ethan still slept on the couch, one arm draped across his chest. He stood there for a long time, the letter in one hand, the flash drive in the other. Then he whispered, "What else didn't you tell me?" Ethan stirred, opened his eyes, saw the letter, sat up slowly like the weight of it had pulled him awake. He didn't speak right away. Then finally he said, "I didn't want you to hate her, or me." "I don't," Noah said, "but I need everything. No more shielding me." Ethan nodded slowly, tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. "Then it's time you see the place where it started." Noah blinked. "Where?" Ethan stood and retrieved an old folded map from the bottom drawer of the sideboard. He circled a red X in the corner. Astracor's old testing site. It was shut down before she testified. They claimed they razed the building. But they didn't. Not all of it. She went there the day before she vanished. I found her car parked near the fence line hours later. Noah's pulse spiked. "Then we go." Ethan nodded. "Tomorrow night." As Noah went back to bed, adrenaline coursing through his veins, the same email account lit up again. Subject: "You're getting too close." Body: "Back off or the next grave won't be empty." They waited until nightfall, not because of fear, though there was plenty of that, but because the place Ethan had marked on the map wasn't just forgotten. It was fenced off, buried in bureaucratic red tape, and officially demolished on paper. But like so many things connected to Jenna Price's disappearance, what was official rarely lined up with the truth. Astracor's former testing site sat on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by dense pine woods and silent roads with fading lane lines. The road leading to it had been overtaken by weeds, and the old sign at the entrance had collapsed, leaving only a rusted metal post where the company's name once gleamed. Ethan parked the car a few hundred feet back, near a ditch overgrown with wild grass. He killed the engine, and the silence pressed in. It was a heavy kind of silence, thick, like the land itself was holding its breath. "You sure about this?" Ethan asked. Noah's face was pale but resolute. "I need to know what she came here for." They grabbed flashlights, gloves, and a small crowbar Ethan kept in the trunk, just in case. The fence around the property had long since been breached. A wide section sagged under the weight of time, pushed open by deer or thrill-seeking kids with nothing better to do. They slipped through. What remained of the testing facility rose ahead of them like a skeletal ghost. A crumbling concrete building, half swallowed by vines, its windows shattered, doorways gaping like missing teeth. The paint on the walls had long since peeled away, but traces of Astracor's deep green logo still clung stubbornly to the front. Inside, the air was damp and metallic, laced with the scent of mold, rot, and something sour. Noah's flashlight swept over exposed wires, overturned file cabinets, shattered glass vials, and graffiti scrawled in thick black ink. "Silence is compliance, and the dead don't testify." Ethan checked his phone. No service. "Where would she have gone?" Noah asked, stepping carefully around a collapsed support beam. Ethan scanned the walls, recalling the blueprints he once saw in a case file. If they were running illegal trials, they wouldn't have used the front labs. They would have kept it underground, off the books. They found the stairwell in the back, hidden behind a metal door hanging off its hinges. The stairs creaked and groaned with each step. Water pooled at the bottom of the landing, and their breath fogged in the sudden drop in temperature. The underground level was smaller than expected, 3 rooms branching off a short corridor. Each door marked with black stenciled letters, Testing A, Observation, and Security. Access limited. Ethan tried the security door first, locked. The crowbar came out, and after a few tense minutes of prying and straining, the lock gave with a cracking pop. Inside, they found what they hadn't dared hope for: hard drives, stacks of them, labeled with date ranges and trial codes. Dust-covered, but intact. Ethan grabbed two at random, wrapped them in an old cloth from his backpack, and slid them inside. Noah was already at the metal filing cabinet in the corner, rummaging through its rusted drawers. He pulled out an envelope, sealed and thick with documents. "Dad?" Ethan stepped beside him. Noah opened the envelope slowly, revealing lab reports, patient names, drug compound breakdowns, some of them circled in red ink. And then, at the very bottom, a photograph. It was Jenna, standing in this very hallway. She wore a protective lab coat over her pregnant belly, and her eyes, though strained, burned with urgency. Behind her, the same graffiti they'd just passed. "The dead don't testify." Someone had taken this photo. March 22nd, 2018, Ethan whispered, reading the timestamp. Noah looked up, pale. The day before she disappeared. The air shifted then, like something behind them moved. Both froze. A soft click echoed down the corridor. Footsteps. Ethan snapped off his flashlight. Noah followed, holding his breath. They ducked behind a half-collapsed wall of steel filing cabinets. A sliver of pale light swam across the opposite hallway. Someone else had entered with a flashlight. And they weren't alone. A voice echoed through the basement, low and unfamiliar. "She told you not to come back here." Noah's heart pounded so hard he thought it might give them away. He risked a peek. A man in a black coat moved slowly into the room, sweeping his flashlight across the floor. Another figure followed. A second man, smaller, gloves on his hands, holding something Noah couldn't see. Ethan leaned in, whispered, "We can't go back the way we came." Noah nodded. The back hallway, a narrow service corridor just beyond the testing room. They moved in a crouch, careful not to step on glass. The flashlight beam passed inches from the wall they pressed against. The second man muttered something, indistinct, but the tone was impatient. "We clear it tonight, burn it. No more surprises." Noah felt ice crawl through his blood. Ethan pointed to the end of the hall, an old steel door marked Exit B. It was jammed, but after a few brutal seconds of Ethan throwing his weight against it, the rust gave way and the door burst open into a thicket of wet brush and black sky. They didn't stop running until they were deep in the woods, far from the perimeter. Noah's legs ached. His lungs burned, but they kept going until even the sound of the night returned. Crickets, the wind through the trees, the ordinary world slowly creeping back in. When they finally reached the car, Ethan locked the doors and pulled away fast, his hands shaking on the wheel. They had gotten what they came for, but someone knew, someone was still watching, and now, clearly, someone was willing to destroy the last trace of what Jenna left behind. Noah stared down at the photo in his hands. His mother, brave, alone, facing monsters in the dark. She had walked into that place knowing what it could cost her. Now, 7 years later, her son had walked out of it. And the war she started wasn't over. It had only just begun. By the time they got home, the sky was turning grey at the edges. Morning was coming, slow and reluctant, but there would be no sleep that night. Ethan immediately cleared the dining table, laid out the photo of Jenna, the envelope of documents, and the 2 hard drives they'd taken from the AstraCore testing facility. Noah fetched his laptop and began scanning the drives using a borrowed recovery tool from the forum he'd frequented. Most of the data was corrupted, but enough came through to send shivers down both their spines. Patient files, surveillance logs, internal emails, some flagged confidential, do not archive. The names on the documents read like a map of hidden casualties. Patients who had undergone off-record trials, dosage variations beyond approved thresholds, notes detailing side effects like memory loss, seizures, and, in 2 cases, death within 72 hours of administration. One of the files, labeled Subject J31 Scene, had been edited multiple times by someone using the username L. Crane. Noah froze when he read that name. "Dad," he said, "does Crane mean anything to you?" Ethan blinked. "Lieutenant Lucas Crane, Ridgefield Police Department. He was the lead investigator on your mother's case." Noah stared at him. "You're sure?" Ethan nodded. "I remember it because he was the one who told me the case was being closed. He said there was no evidence of foul play. Noah turned the screen so his father could see. There it was, in black and white, Crane's name, attached to multiple internal reports regarding trial management, dosing logs, and patient evaluations at the Ridgefield AstraCore lab, all of it dated before the shutdown, long before Jenna disappeared. Ethan stood slowly, the weight of the revelation sinking in. He wasn't just an investigator, he was involved from the beginning. Which means, Noah added quietly, when he took her case, he wasn't trying to find her, he was trying to bury her. The room chilled instantly. Ethan grabbed his phone, scrolled through old contacts, and found Martin Graves's number. When the ex-PI picked up, his voice was groggy. "I need everything you can get on Lucas Crane," Ethan said. "His employment, financials, any connection to AstraCore." Graves was silent for a moment, then responded, "I'll start digging. But if this is what I think it is, you're not safe anymore." As the sun finally cracked over the horizon, the unease set in deeper. Crane had been a trusted figure, a man of the law, and now it was clear he had been one of them, one of the men behind the curtain. By noon, Graves had results. He met them at a small cafe on the edge of town, away from surveillance cameras and curious eyes. He sat down across from them with a folder in his hand and a tight expression. Lucas Crane never officially worked for AstraCore, Graves said, but his wife did. Senior legal counsel from 2014 to 2018, resigned 3 days after your wife disappeared. Ethan's jaw clenched, and no one questioned that. She filed the resignation remotely, Graves said, email only, moved to Vermont, changed her name, got remarried 6 months later. And Crane? Still in Ridgefield, still with the department, promoted last year. He's kept his nose clean, publicly, but someone's protecting him. Noah opened the folder and scanned the documents. One caught his eye immediately, a financial report showing an unusual wire transfer from an anonymous trust fund to Crane's personal bank account 3 weeks before Jenna vanished. The amount? $175,000. Blood money, Noah whispered. Ethan looked at Graves. Can we get to him? Graves leaned forward. I'm not telling you what to do, but if you confront him, do it on your terms, not his. They drove back in silence. The plan formed without words. That night, under cover of dusk, they'd go to Crane. They'd bring the evidence. They'd demand answers. But Ridgefield had other plans. When they arrived home, the mailbox was open again. Only this time, there was something inside. A manila envelope. No address, no name, just a single line scrawled across the front in thick black ink. You woke up a sleeping dog. Ethan ripped it open. Inside were printed screenshots, images from the night before. Him and Noah entering the old testing site, leaving through the woods. A distant shot of their car from a long-lens camera. Noah's stomach dropped. They were watching us the whole time. The doorbell rang. They froze. Another ring. Ethan peeked through the peephole. A uniformed officer stood on the porch, one Ethan recognized but couldn't name. Not Crane. He opened the door a crack. Can I help you? The officer smiled, too calmly. There's been an incident. Lieutenant Crane is dead. Car accident on Route 6 about an hour ago. Just thought you'd want to know. Ethan blinked, stunned. What? The officer nodded. Single vehicle, off a cliff. No signs of braking. Noah stepped into view behind his father. Do you think it was an accident? The officer met his eyes for a little too long. We'll let you know what the investigation finds. And then he was gone. The moment the door closed, Ethan turned to Graves on speaker. Crane's dead. There was a pause. They're covering their tracks, Graves said grimly, which means you're getting close, too close. Noah sat down, shaken but focused. Then we push harder. We release the footage, the documents, everything. Ethan hesitated. Once we do that, there's no turning back. There wasn't the moment they took her, Noah said. We bring them all down. Noah stood before the microphone, palms sweating, the room hushed around him. The town hall wasn't full, just a mix of reporters, activists, 2 independent journalists, and 3 former AstraCore employees who had come forward anonymously. But the cameras were rolling. The footage was live, and behind him the screen displayed the recovered image of Jenna Price, pregnant, determined, standing in the Astracor basement, the words, "The dead don't testify," behind her. Noah's voice was steady as he spoke. "My mother didn't disappear. She was silenced, intimidated. She uncovered illegal drug testing on pregnant women that led to multiple deaths. She went to the hospital to deliver her baby, and instead she was taken. And the people who did it were protected." He showed the footage of the van, the recovered files, the email logs, and then he dropped the name, Lieutenant Lucas Crane. The room shifted. Reporters whispered to each other. A few heads turned. Ethan watched from the side of the room, his face unreadable. Behind him, Graves stood with arms folded, scanning the audience like a soldier on patrol. Noah concluded, "She tried to speak the truth. I'm speaking it now, and I won't stop until every name behind this is known." The moment the press conference ended, phones started ringing. The footage went viral within hours. Journalists demanded statements from the Ridgefield PD, from Astracor, from the hospital administration. The department denied everything. Astracor said it was deeply saddened by the renewed speculation and unsubstantiated claims. But then an anonymous source inside the company leaked internal memos, ones matching Noah's documents, and the denials began to collapse. But none of that prepared him for what came next. 3 days later, Graves called with a voice that trembled ever so slightly. "Noah," he said, "you need to come to St. Helena's Hospital, now." Ethan and Noah arrived just after 7 p.m. Graves met them at the side entrance and said only one thing: "She's alive." Noah's knees nearly gave out. "What do you mean?" Ethan demanded. Graves led them to the 3rd floor, through a quiet wing marked Behavioral Recovery, Restricted Access. A nurse unlocked a secure door, led them down a long corridor, and stopped in front of room 9. 7 years ago, Graves said, a woman was checked in under the name Jane Doe. Non-verbal, disoriented, no ID. The staff thought she'd been in some kind of trauma, drug exposure, maybe electroshock. She had a scar along her abdomen, C-section, but no baby. She never spoke, not a word. But yesterday she did. Noah's heartbeat was a cannon in his chest. "She asked for her son," Graves said. The nurse opened the door, and there she was. Older, thinner, hair grayer, tucked behind her ears. But the eyes, those fierce, searching eyes, had not changed. Jenna Price sat up in the hospital bed, staring at the doorway, her lips parted like she had been waiting all this time for this exact moment. Noah stepped forward. "Mom," her breath caught, her lips trembled, and then, after 7 years, she spoke his name, Noah. He rushed to her, wrapping his arms around her frail shoulders, shaking with sobs. Ethan stood frozen at the door, hand covering his mouth, tears sliding silently down his cheeks. "How?" Noah finally asked. "How are you here?" Jenna looked at him, eyes wide. "They took me to a clinic, not far. I gave birth, but I never saw you. They sedated me, said I was unstable, that I was a danger to you. They told me if I screamed, they'd kill you. So I stopped screaming." Ethan moved closer, whispering, "I thought you were dead. I searched every file, every room. They told me your body washed away during a flood. God, Jenna, I didn't know." "They broke me," she said, "but I remembered your face. Both of you. I held on to that." Graves stepped forward. "She was transferred here under a different system. Patients with no ID or advocates, buried in the mental health records. If your case hadn't gone viral, someone never would have noticed the name in the system matched one of the original patients." Noah looked back at his mother. "We have everything. The footage, the files. Crane is dead. Astracor's falling apart." Jenna gripped his hand. "Then don't stop. There are more, others like me. Find them." She wasn't just a survivor, she was still a whistleblower. Weeks passed. Astracor's CEO resigned under pressure. A federal task force was launched to investigate human trials and corporate cover-ups. Graves helped coordinate testimony from 2 former lab techs who confirmed that women like Jenna were sent to private recovery clinics to avoid exposure. The term they used in their documents was containment care. Jenna began speaking more every day. Therapy helped, So did seeing Noah, reading the letter she had once written to him without knowing if he'd ever read it. One afternoon, as they walked through the garden outside the hospital, Jenna paused and turned to Ethan. "You never stopped looking, did you?" He shook his head. "Not once." She smiled. "Then we still have time." A year later, Jenna Price testified before a grand jury. Her story opened a new federal case, one that led to the conviction of 6 executives, the disbanding of AstraCore's private security division, and the overhaul of hospital ethics regulations nationwide. But more than that, it gave her son his mother back. And it gave Jenna what she had always wanted, not vengeance, not fame, but to be heard. Because silence, she once said, is how the monsters win. But her voice had survived, and now the whole world was listening.